As long as it's not 40, like somebody from last week. We're gonna do the from tomorrow night. Okay, here we are. Hi, Joe. How's it going? Joe's here from our fabulous facilities team. Let's have a hand for Joe. Joe makes sure that everything works, and we would be lost and bereft without him. So we're grateful that he's part of our team. Welcome everybody for our third and final faculty event of the evening. Wow, these are like, what? No, it's okay. I can deal with it. It's an intro setting? It's like normal? I feel like it's dark outside in so many ways. Anyway, we have a great lineup for you tonight. We have a wonderful crew. We're going to welcome Kimiko Hahn to the stage to read her poetry. We're very excited about that. Welcome him for... And very happy to also welcome back to the stage Forrest Williams, who will be giving a talk about his beautiful, gorgeous paintings. So a big hand for Forrest. You don't have to wait for me to applaud. You can just jump right in and applause, because every single person's name that I'm going to mention is worthy of hearty and boisterous, I was about to say massage, but that doesn't work. Although that could be, but applause is what I meant to say. Before we get started, a couple of items of housekeeping. What's tomorrow night? That's right. And open studios and student nights. So if you haven't already signed up for the student reading and you're in a writing workshop, I'm not going to say anything. You know what I'm going to say. I'm not going to say it. Okay. I'm not going to talk about doing a wave. I'm not going to do any of those things. Anyway, tomorrow night is student night, and you know what you need to do if you haven't already done so. If you have already done so, good for you. You're setting a great example, though I noticed a couple people skipping spots. It's so charming. Okay, I'd also like you to remind you to consider supporting our honor tax, a new thing that we initiated this year. Miracle can hold up the table tent thing at the back that has the QR code and the URL that'll take you straight to the Make a Donation page of the Native Land Conservancy in Mashpee, Mass. And it's one thing that we're doing to move beyond our land acknowledgement and make amends to our Wampanoag neighbors. So if you consider doing that, we'd be very, very grateful. Kimiko will be signing books at the back at that table right there at the end of the evening. Her books are for sale. Books from all the other faculty are for sale on the back table in the bookcase and in the bookstore in between the two halves of the gallery. Check out the bookstore. It looks great. There's a really nice new rug in the bookstore. So if you haven't checked it out, it's really great. And there's some signage. It's really cool. We have lots of sweet merch. We have notebooks. We have totes. Has anybody seen our new totes? And you ask Miracle to get up again. Oh wait, she's going to hold up a tote. There it is. Ooh. Reasonably priced and beautiful. And I will remind you that if you're here with us this week on a scholarship, you are entitled to a 30% discount on all our merch. So run, don't walk. Not now. Wait till after. Be safe. Hudson Walker Gallery is open now and will be after the reading. We have a great summer exhibition that's up right now called To Move a Mountain and is curated by former Falk Fellow Cody Brown. And it consists of work by a dozen, I think, former Falk Fellows. It's very beautiful. Check it out. I would like to give a shout out to the Arts Foundation, as always, the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod and the Cape Cod 5 Foundation, because they so generously support our public programming in the summer. And you all know where the restrooms are? Does anybody not know where the restrooms are? They're down there. Where's the sign-up sheet for Thursday night? Great. I'm going to stop any second, I promise. We have assisted listening devices at the back of the room. If that would help make your experience this evening more meaningful, please check with Miracle Ohana to get you hooked up with one of those. And now, finally, I'd like to ask you to do the thing that you all must do every night, and that is to turn your cell phones to silent or off. Please, look, people are actually checking. Thank you, grateful. Wonderful. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce one of Kimiko's students, Jack Keffer, to the stage to introduce Kimiko. Thank you.
Hi, folks. I'm Jack, and I'm here to introduce Kimiko. On our first day, Kimiko asked us to write something, and then she told us not to censor ourselves in our practice. And it was a phenomenal first little nugget lesson on Sunday night. On the second day, Kimiko told us who could and who could not write haikus. And I, unfortunately, cannot write haikus. On the third day, Kimiko tried to send us everyone's email addresses, and then we got 4 total emails. So that was fun to follow throughout the day. Also on the second day, we learned to make list poems. So here is a list poem put together by members of our class. It is entitled 7 Things We Heard in Kimiko Hahn's Class. Hermit crap essay, due Friday. When diction is specific, it heightens the language. Bring theme into relief. What is the opposite of loneliness? I see your purpose is to keep me in confusion. Obsession is a form of education. Play and make personal connection. In a list, every item needs to be extraordinary. So those are 7 things that we heard in Kimiko Hahn's class. Kimiko Hahn's The Ghost Forest, new and selected poems, spans 10 collections and subjects ranging from identity to science. In the new work, she continues to play with Eastern and Western forms, reflecting her interest in Japanese poetics. Her essay on the zuihitsu was published in the American Poetry Review. Among her honors is the 2023 recipient of the Ruth Lilly Prize for Lifetime Achievement from the Poetry Foundation. Hahn teaches in the MFA Program for Creative Writing and Literary Translation at Queens College, City University of New York. And at present, she is co-editing an anthology of zuihitsu, which is a form that struggles to find a concrete definition. Kimiko says it is defined by a sense of disorder. And as I sit across from her in our classroom up top with my very messy desk and half-completed work by the day's end, I feel very grateful that I have a teacher who values disorder, spontaneity, and a freedom of expression that is so evident in her writing and in her relationships. Without further ado, Kimiko Hahn.
I don't know if I'm the only person, but I never know who's going to introduce me. David, do you keep everyone guessing? Yeah, it's marvelous. Thank you. And thank you, Jack. Yes, I think everybody is pretty much signed on to disorder at this point. So, let me start my... Thank you to Sharon, David, Dustin, Hannah, and Miracle. Thank you all for making things smooth and lively and happy. I love and admire what you all have done in this new chapter of FALC. It's tremendous. For me, the granddaughter of immigrants, DEI is a value that I am proud of. So thank you for all your work, and thank you all for joining us in the kind of celebration that we do every day and every summer. Thank you to my students for trusting me. I think they trust me. It seems that way. And for making space for me and one another. We hear one another here. I was putting together the manuscript that would become Ghost Forest. It starts with new work and then goes back in time. And I sent it to my friend, poet Jan Heller-Levy, who read all my books over again and then looked at my manuscript. I titled the manuscript The Ghost Forest, which is after 2 poems in the new section. And she said, I love the title, but it doesn't really fit the whole manuscript. Ugh. Ugh, she was right. So rather than change the title, I decided to change the manuscript. What I have is a thread on gray pages that runs through as a kind of commentary where I ruminate about process and past and how I didn't go into an MFA program. I had a lot of really spectacular undergrad teachers, but I missed out on certain things that now I give to my own students. So I really wanted me as a seasoned writer to mentor that younger self over her early collections. So I did some revision. Some people will not touch their early work, so that's their decision. This was mine. Because recklessness was a kind of aesthetic or way of writing, and so I needed to tweak that recklessness every once in a while. I'm going to open with this poem, A Triolet. I became more interested in forms the past 20 years. When I first started writing in the 1970s, I was a hippie, and hippies did not write in forms. That was bourgeois. So it's taken me a while, decades, to really engage with form in a meaningful way. So repetition and disruption, expectation, play with that expectation. So this is a triolet that one of my grad students, introduced me to this form. A riotous disorder. She mistakes one word for another, something her brain naturally concocts. Her unruly gray matter and her heart mistake one word for an other, razor for river, cistern for sister, even cock for clock. She mistakes one word for a mother, a safe her brain naturally unlocks. It took me about 15 or so years to write a sestina. A sestina repeats repeats 6 words at the end of each line, and it cycles through in a pattern. These words are daughter, ship, right, left, safe, and whale. Note that a right whale is a kind of whale that was frequently hunted. When I refer to a miner's right, I mean R-I-T-E. To be a daughter and to have a daughter can forecast at odds relationships, especially when the mother hazards to write on her own hours, O-U-R-S, what time's left while keeping the baby safe from herself as she and the baby wail, one in the crib, the other on the floor to wail with the vacuum cleaner so the daughter can't hear mama drowning. So the new relationship isn't all arithmetic and geometry, all right angles barely connecting. What is left at dusk, still tender and safe, you couldn't pluck and lock in a safe, not unlike a girl calf and her mama whale. 2 generations of breaching daughters applauded by tourists on a ship, but more lightly if they are right whales, or what species are left, of those docile equatorial pods, never left by men hunting their fat. They are not safe. Larger than grays, smaller than blue whales, the very buoyant mother and son or daughter enjoy a year-long relationship unless whalers spy these right whales to hunt. Funny, given the mariner's right to trick a man to think he'd been left for the sharks without the safety of pity or prayer. Then that whaler would wail for his own mother, wife, or daughter. When it comes to daughter-mother relationships, I've written on both till there's nothing left, without breaching safety, without wailing. After all, I love daughters and I love ships. A ghazal is a Persian and also South Asian form that presents as a series of autonomous couplets. So there's no through line, there's no narrative. You could sort of toss them around. It's very tricky and actually difficult to have those couplets remain autonomous. Anyway, I'm not really going to read one, but I'm going to read one. I'm going to read a poem that uses repetition, similar to the ghazal. The opening in a ghazal uses the repetition twice, and the closing, a repeated last word or phrase, and the closing needs to make reference to the poet. So, being very playful and using a lot of outside source material, I was reading a New York Times article on the birds in Chicago that kept hitting, during migratory season, kept hitting the skyscrapers. And so this is called Found Lines for a Ghazal on nearly 1,000 birds. So they're lines that I can imagine using if I was going to write a ghazal, but I haven't, so. Found lines for a ghazal on nearly 1,000 birds. Around 200 dead birds. Some days, no birds die, the nearly 1,000 dead birds. But the carpet of bird, how important it is for buildings to turn off their lights during bird. Blown away by how many birds? The temperature had been unusually high, and the birds. When the temperatures dropped and the wind shifted, a huge number of birds. At the Field Museum, dead birds. Turned over to a flesh-eating beetle colony that cleans the birds. Mr. Stotts said that the high concentration of dead birds and also new is this pantoum, originally a Malaysian form. It uses repeated lines in a set pattern, which rather than lecture, I think you'll hear. And as I said, I like to, when something is expected to repeat, I like to slightly change it. The toxologist at home. I literally lurch from thing to thing with more curiosity than patience to accost what cannot be seen. Neither incensed nor senseless, I possess more curiosity than patience, unlike the crown of thorns sea star. Not incensed or senseless, more prickly or barbed. Unlike the crown of thorns sea star, I do not possess deadly spikes. I'm just prickly or barbed. That's supposed to be funny. Sorry. I'm just prickly or barbed, at times metaphysically toxic. Alas, I do not possess deadly spikes. I do not turn myself inside out. At times metaphysically toxic, I belong to a crown of thorns sea star. So I don't turn myself inside out. I lurch from thing to literal thing. I long to be a crown of thorns sea star, to accost what cannot be seen. I had a funny experience in this room when it looked very different. The stage was there, and I was reading, and one of the staff members had heard my work before. So she was laughing uproariously. She's like the best audience member ever. And everyone else kept looking at her like, how dare you laugh at a poem? But she got people going, so. Yes, they are poems, so please. This is a poem from my book, Foreign Bodies. I sometimes like to make my own structures or forms. And I want to say before I read this that I like to think of myself as a political poet, not one whose poems are always pointedly political, but where a political dimension at times comes in slant. Also, as someone said earlier, one of the other faculty members, the personal is political. So oftentimes, as details in my own surroundings or current events of the moment, they'll just kind of pop up. In Foreign Bodies, there is, as in a number of my books, poems about missing my mother. Even when she was alive, I missed her. So this is thinking about her decades after she was dead. And it's a little bit long in sections. A dusting. However mother has reappeared, say, as motes on a feather duster, scientists say the galaxy was thus created. This daybreak, she seeds a cumulus cloud. Wherever mother is bound, she's joined ashes, ashes, or dirt underfoot, or bits off Tower North and Tower South. Repurpose does not arrive whole cloth. From stardust, dust bunnies, dust bowl, dust unto dust, to Rookeisers, silica, Whitman's boot soles, and Dunbar's, what of his love, what of his lust, to samples that astronomers collect, dust is where the sparrow bathes herself. Not a cloud in the sky, mother said as she hangs the laundry outside. Father paints en plein air, and we girls sweep crumbs under the rug. This summer, father sees inferno everywhere. No dust-ups from little girls. As a consequence, one scribbled on the dustbins of history, and the other dusted for fingerprints. And the mother lived in a vacuum. Inside the senseless corridors, the daughter cannot respire. Inside the vulgar cosmic, the mother cannot be revived in streaming wet traffic. Nowadays, I lie down in the sunlight to see my mama moting around as sympathetic ash. Yes, one morning, whether misty or yellow, I'll be soot with her, elegiac and original. This poem actually goes back to new pieces. Over the decades, I've liked to pay homage to writers from the past, especially, though not exclusively, women writers. And here I have swiped a line from Elizabeth Bishop's poem Sestina. The line is, "The grandmother sings to the marvelous stove," and I swiped it for a villanelle. She uses repeating lines. Villanelle with a line borrowed from Bishop. The child looks out the window at the peeling barn. The mother sits on the roof and waves at her. The grandmother sings to the marvelous stove. The child has put away her own toy marvel stove because her grandmother is baking real bread. The child looks out the window at the peeling barn. The two inside are preparing dinner for 3, if the mother comes down from the roof. The grandmother sings to the marvelous stove a song about some mothers on some roof, lightly the mother that is her daughter. The child looks out the window at the peeling barn. The child hums along while she stands to survey her reeling barn and to hear as the grandmother sings to the marvelous stove. She's drawn at least half a dozen barns today. She stops humming and sings her own song. She looks at her mother atop the peeling barn while the grandmother sings to marvel the stove. Golden shovels are another way to, it's a form, are another way to pay homage to past writers. Terrence Hayes, who was here last week and said he didn't invent the golden shovel, even though everybody knows he did, invented it, and you take a line or a whole poem, and all the words appear at the end of the line. So you'll hear it. It's easier to hear than comprehend my description. In this case, I take haiku, and this one is translated by Hiroaki Sato. The haiku is by Tada Chimako, and it goes, "Inside my body, death is a soft, wintry wart." Inside my body, after Tada Chimako. Though unseeable, we assume the inside, tissue, blood, and bone appear in my mind. The piss and shit before the body evacuates. But also lodged is one's death in some form, unless expiring is unforeseen, like my mother's, a crashing metal against metal, her soft self crushed on that wintry parkway. Did the paramedic notice her wart? A lot of my poems are actually prompted by the science section of the New York Times. That's my book, Toxic Flora and Brain Fever, primarily. But as I said, I do use a lot of outside source material. This one I'm going to read because it's my husband Harold's favorite, or one of his favorites. We were at a documentary called Wisconsin Death Trip. And it's the book itself is a collection of photographs that an artist found all over Wisconsin. And anyway, in the film, they talked about premature burial. So this is photos from the 1800s, and I thought, oh, I would love to write a poem about premature burial. So as we were leaving, I said something to Harold about that, and he said, I have just the book for you. This is his area. Death is his area of expertise, so to speak. And he said, it's a book called Premature Burial and How to Prevent It, and it was written in the 1800s. It took me over a year to figure out how to use it, but here it is. And then I'll read one short piece. Like Lavinia. Like Lavinia Merli in 1890, Imajola Mantua expired from hysteria and placed in a vault on Thursday, July 3rd, where she regained consciousness, tore at the grave's clothes her peasant husband had just smoothed around her 7-month pregnant belly, and where she turned over and gave birth, but not discovered until Saturday, both mother and newborn, then really dead. Like George Hefdecker of Erie, Pennsylvania, a farmer who, upon suffering heart failure in 1891, was temporarily buried until the purchase of a plot and was unearthed 4 days later with his fingers so bitten off his hands no longer looked human. Like Mr. Opelt, a wealthy manufacturer in Ruttenberg, whose vault, unsealed 15 years after his death, was found to contain a skeleton seated in the corner, the coffin lid off. Like the gendarme in 1809, dead drunk on potato brandy, whose banging in the coffin caused the sexton to bore holes, though by then the Frenchman had mutilated his head in an effort to burst through and was fully deceased. Like them, yes, the air about my body dead, even in this abrupt consciousness. He sips his instant coffee black and turns on 1010 Winds. The apartment is in the back of a storefront. The neighborhood kids piss under the door. Our bedroom is so drafty we sleep in layers of sweats and stuff old towels in window cracks. But it isn't the boys or the draft that keeps me from opening my eyes, not the traffic update or Dow Jones, not even that man setting his cup down on the counter to whack a mouse with a broom. If I press my ear to the pillow, I can mistake my pulse for awareness. It's the light, even when the lights are off. He closes the door on the newly hung wallpaper and the dishes soaking in sudsy gray gravy for his nightly walk down Broadway, communing with black hookers and white junkies. He is looking for oxygen. I am the wife, under the fluorescent bathroom light, tweezing each hair around my sex. It vaguely hurts. It reminds me that feeling is not what I will get from him. It kills time until Miami Vice. Afterwards, the infant daughter will wake just as we lie down. There are several reported happy endings, like the farm wife, Mrs. Sarceval, who in 1891, while milking cows, saw beneath the floorboards a nest of snakes and fell to the ground, then presumed dead by her physician and loved ones until she sat upright in her coffin. Her daughter led the woman to the breakfast table where she ate heartily. Ah, it is amazing they are found ever. I was going to read another short one, but we'll stop on that lighthearted note. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kimiko, for that wonderful reading. I wonder, did you attend Laura Shabbat's talk this past month, Tuesday? Well, someone in your classroom must have heard her say that obsession is a form of education, because she said it in her talk, which is, I think, is so fabulously inspirational. Thank you again, Kimiko, for your wonderful reading. And I would like to invite Debbie Greenwood to the stage to introduce Forrest Williams.
Forrest Williams is a figurative painter who has shown his work in San Francisco, New York, Portland, Montreal, and for numerous summers at Provincetown's AMP Gallery. This summer, he will be showing at Schoolhouse Gallery. I believe August 1st, it opens. He was an undergraduate English major at Davidson College and received his MFA in painting from the New York Academy of Art. He now lives and works in both New York City and Provincetown. This is his 6th summer teaching at the Fine Arts Work Center. Several of his students are here tonight. I have to describe being in his class as very enlightening and also very exciting to think about educators and think about artists as educators, because that's a whole other ability that I appreciate, having taught for many decades. And I was, as others were, very impressed with his generosity, his willingness to meet students at their level. You know, we hear, as he discusses with other people, the dialogue and the feedback, and I think we were all pretty impressed with his ability to kind of bring the best from each of us, and we were all, I think, working very hard. He's very motivational. And I just think, in addition to being a great artist, he's also a great teacher. And it's a gift. It's a gift to be able to bring the best out of people and have them feel confident. And I love hearing him say to every student, so how do you feel about how it's going? I mean, it's really easy to get into your own way of doing things, and he was just so encouraging. He encouraged us to consider possibilities and explore new approaches to our work. So for me, it was a real growth, and I really appreciate it. And I wanted to thank Forrest for all you've done to help your students see, because there's a quote Edgar Degas had said, and maybe you are aware of this quote: "Art is not what you see, but what you make others see." So thank you. So Forrest, he's going to show you his work now.
Let's see. Okay. Debbie, thank you. That was very, very generous. And I appreciate it. Let's see, does anyone know how to tighten this? I'm sorry. Okay, cool. Perfect. Thanks, Hannah. Thank you all for being here. It's really nice of you to take the time to come, and thank you to the Fine Arts Work Center for the privilege of being here. It's a real pleasure, and I appreciate all that you've done. David, Austin, Sharon, Hannah, Miracle, Joe, everybody's made everything extra nice, and I appreciate it. Apologies to a few people who were here last year, among them Kimiko and Dante, a few people I taught with. You may be hearing some repeats of some bad jokes, and you'll be seeing some paintings you've seen before. But I was saying to my friend Mira, who's here, I can't really, the poets and writers can read their latest work. I can't really spend 20 minutes talking about my one latest painting, so I'm going to have to kind of go over some things that people have heard before. I'd like to start off with a quote by Edward Hopper, since we're doing quotes of artists. If you could say it in words, there would be no reason to paint. And one reason I start off with it is because I'm a painter, so it gets me off the hook for actually having to say anything in words that's of any interest or value. But I'll try, and I'm just going to show you some images of my work and talk a little bit about where I'm coming from. Really, more than anything for me, I think what I'm just trying to get across in my work is a feeling. And it may be a contained feeling, but it's feeling nonetheless. It's sort of about how I see the world as I move through it. And what has always interested me in both work that I look at and in my own work is that sort of place of tension between the containment and the expression of feeling, this sort of in-between place. And the challenge is how to portray that visually. I kind of think of my paintings as stages where there's a drama playing out. It's not necessarily a real person or real people or a real place. They're really more interior worlds, like inner spaces. Somebody in a review called my figures psychological journeymen, which was very flattering, but it was great because I felt like they were keying into kind of what I'm trying to get at. Probably everything for me in my work is inextricably linked to the fact that I'm a gay man, just because of who I am in the world that I grew up in at that particular place and time. It's a lot about this idea of the containment of feeling, of holding things in, of not revealing much. I've quoted them before, but the performer and great artist Justin Vivian Bond said once that they felt that they were taught to doubt themselves as a queer person. And I relate to that. It's sort of built in. And I'm speaking for me. I know that things are evolving and changing in the world, but I think we can all relate to these things, to a certain degree. So I really think that a lot of my work is about consciousness, or specifically like self-consciousness, and trying to sort of convey visually this experience of self-awareness or selfhood in a world in which you feel separate. This is an early painting. I just want to talk about my roots, which are in classical, very traditional classical Western styles of painting, which I've always loved. I love a lot of types of work, but this is sort of where I was coming from. And I think I said last year, and Dante kindly contradicted me, I don't think it's that great a painting, but the point is that it's just sort of talking about where I come from. I called it Annunciation. And I think what was the young me was going for was this sort of traditional sort of archetypal setup. I mean, most of us know what an Annunciation is and what those paintings look like, but they're very staged, they're very self-conscious, and they seem like these very quiet, contained, almost passive moments. But something very deep is going on in those moments. And what did I write? An Annunciation is, it's a revelation, but it's also a burden. This is another painting I did as a young man in about 1530. And it is called Portrait of a Young Man, but it's not by me, it's by Bronzino. And this painting is in the Met in New York, where I've lived most of my adult life. And I love this painting, I always have, and I really loved it when I was younger, and particularly when I'd had less experience painting. And I guess the question I asked myself for years is what was it? I thought of this as a really gay painting. Why? What makes this a gay painting for me? There's nothing explicit here, indicating that. There may be some hints of a few things here and there that kind of mystified me. You can't really see, unfortunately these slides look a little bit dark, but there are strange figureheads, strange folds in his garments that are almost mask-like. There's like a mystery there, even though the figure himself is very contained. It's sort of, there's a formal rigor, a sort of a distance, something not knowable and withheld. And I think what it was in the end that made me think of it as a gay painting was it was just the ambiguity. That's sort of the conclusion I came to. And I started doing my version. I did bunches of portraits of a young man using myself because I was a convenient model to use, but also they were a little bit about self-exploration. And I think they were kind of about desire and doubt all at once, and sort of conflicting things going on at once. And with my early work, I just continued to try to connect to this classical painting tradition that I loved, and building in elements of pattern, which I really love, as sort of another character. And again, more pattern and sort of a scaffolding between the figures, like a formal, the only thing that holds them together is sort of the way this thing is composed. And in this case, I, in a rather obvious way, built in a disconnection, sort of an unbridgeable distance between the figures by making this, a triptych. So there are literally unbridgeable spaces, as small as they are, between the figures. This is called Passage. And I'm trying to sort of talk and think about formal issues as well as sort of thematic issues, or what the paintings are about. And again, I was trying to figure out a way to compose paintings, with a sort of a compositional element that was connected to the thematic element. So I did a series of bar paintings, and this is called Blue Bar. It's literally nothing more than a blue bar of paint with this tiny division between the two. But things don't quite line up. They don't quite connect. This is called red bar. So forth. You get the idea. And from there I moved into painting what I called porches. And being from the South, around a lot of porches, and the first thought was, this is just a great scaffolding for me to sort of build a painting around. I can compose a figure, really lock the figure down into the painting, and give the figures discrete spaces to inhabit. But the thing about a porch is, in my own head, it's also an ambiguous place. It's sort of a place of transition. It's not inside, it's not outside. It's sort of this in-between, unsure place. So that in a way, the thing that separates these figures formally is also connecting them. If that makes any sense at all. I wrote, the compositional elements also for me have a metaphorical purpose. They're on this thing that sort of separates and yet connects them at the same time. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. And I guess this is an idea that I've learned about called plasticity, where sort of the way that something is made is inextricably linked to its meaning. They're of a piece. You can't really parse the two things out. Trees started coming into these porches as sort of a third character, something just off stage or an indicator of an elsewhere or something outside of the painting, that maybe there was another world that these figures were not aware of. So Stonewall was in 1969. In 1989, there was a show at the Gay and Lesbian Center in New York City that was to honor the 20th anniversary. And then in 2009, there was a show to honor the anniversary of that anniversary show. And the original artist, or those who were still alive, got to choose a younger artist to do something for this show. And we were all given spots in the Gay and Lesbian Center, which is now a longer name, in New York City. And mine was sort of in a back stairwell between two sets of stairs. So this is really the shape of what I was going to have to work with. And I thought, well, let me try to actually make the painting, of a harmonious piece with the place. And how can I echo that sort of idea of the stairs going downward? And I love arrows, and I've been thinking about arrows for a long time. And I think, well, what a great idea just to sort of draw attention to that movement of the stairs with arrows. But of course, I started to realize that arrows can have meaning as well. So it's sort of that same plastic idea of something that's decorative and directional could also be interpreted as having some meaning. And this sort of scaffolding that distances the figures, but at the same time connects them. So I just ran with this arrow idea after that and did all sorts of paintings involving arrows. And a lot of it is on the diagonal. These are teacup designs and teapot designs. Back to my original gay theme of things that are interesting to me. So this is a book of decorative arts, British decorative arts, and I really love the designs. I liked them just as abstract paintings. I just really wanted to paint these and be done with it. So I was trying to figure out, how can I paint these? I'm a figurative painter, but I really want to paint the patterns. So I just did these very large paintings, continuing with that sort of diagonal idea, adapting these designs, these decorative designs, into sort of an alien world that these figures were sort of locked into and forced to inhabit. And so although there's seemingly unbridgeable distances between them, the pattern itself really actually does bridge and connect them. And it's funny, people have talked about this ways into a painting or something you write. I mean, Dante was talking about just listening to what people have to say and taking that as a way into a poem. Annette talked about maybe just a few characters talking as a way in. And I wanted to read this quote by Lynn Fried, who is an writer that I really like, who unfortunately just passed away. She's a fiction writer. And what she wrote is, the sources of fiction are myriad and complex. A character in a situation, a phrase, a scene, a setting, a smell, anything and all but an idea attached to an intention. And it resonated with me because you can have a big idea, longing or self-consciousness or the unbridgeable distances between people, but you have to have some kind of a way in. And so for me, these patterns are sort of a way into getting into that. It's something to build on. So again, the trees that were creeping in from the other world I started to really go outside. I've been spending a lot of time upstate. I'm sorry you can't see this very well. It's very dark. But I did a series called Woodsman that I really think of these large stages, these large prosceniums that are set in the outdoors in the woods, and they almost started to become these archetypal paintings. I almost think of this as like a medieval morality play with these characters meeting in the woods and these masked figures that are sort of unknowable and maybe even a little bit scary. And they started to feel almost like storybook illustrations with these strange, scary characters, and I did borders on some of them. Sorry, not as clear as they should be. And from those sort of woodland scenes, I sort of moved way out into these vast spaces that were very Provincetown inspired, and I called them lowlands. And a lot of them were inspired by a British artist named George Stubbs, who does a lot of paintings of heaths and places where horses are bred and raced and trained. And so I just started taking little George Stubbs buildings and putting them amongst P-Town buildings. And, I just thought I can make whatever world I want. So there's sort of maybe vaguely a wood end lighthouse next to a stable from a George Stubbs 18th century British painting. Back, you can't really see it, but that's actually the edge of a lighthouse to the left. And I thought, it can just be a shape. And Run, who modeled for this, who happens to be here tonight, I remember him saying, what am I doing? I'm just standing here. Like, what am I supposed to be doing the whole time? I feel like I'm in between. Like, am I coming? Am I going? And I thought, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what this is. But after a while, he came to the conclusion that he was out on the moors waiting for his pot delivery. So that's what we decided he was doing. This is a painting I did of my mom in about 1871 when I was in my 40s. And, pardon? Oh, sorry. Again, you can see themes running through this sort of scaffolding idea of trying to figure out ways of organizing the painting and lock down the figures, separate them, and yet put them in a world that actually is representational as well as abstract. But that really ties into the Whistler's Mother, because this painting is not called Whistler's Mother. As a lot of you may know, it's called Arrangement in Gray and Black No. 1, which is kind of crazy. But his mother, this is like a fundamental relationship, and he's calling a painting of his mother Arrangement in Gray and Black No. 1. But I think it says a lot about the way the artist thinks, because again, you can have the ideas, but you've got to find a formal way in there. And Kimiko was talking about forms, like what's the word? A sonnet or different structures. And so with Whistler's Mother, I just find it a really compelling painting. And when you actually draw some lines, if you go back, can you hear me if I walk away? Basically, the center line of this drapery that spreads out, if you draw a vertical through that, you've got a square, and it's a it's just wild how her hands are just placed perfectly within that triangle. The feet come perfectly, you can barely see it within that triangle. The head just peeks over. The center line is that framed photograph. And, you know, if this woman, if you look at the length between her rear end and her knees, if she stood up, she would just be this giantess. It would be ridiculous. But you don't really think about it or notice it, nor does it matter, because this really is about something else. So I just thought, I want to do my own version of Whistler's Mother, which is not the same. Obviously, it's a longer rectangle. It's a little different. But it really, for me, was an arrangement. And I don't do this with the model. I just play with the arrangements of things, and the model comes in last. So you may not be able to see it, and there's no need for me to grid it out, but it's a very locked down composition. I mean, his nose really just touches the center for a sort of obvious example. But I felt like that locking in of the figure has some kind of thematic resonance, as well as just, for me, a formal way of organizing the painting. And so this became a series of paintings called Ghosts, and for me they were really like night paintings, like the night of the self. And you can't see, but there's actually a room back there with a window with stars, and it's not reading very well in this light, I'm afraid. But again, they're very much stages, very much prosceniums. And for me, they were sort of like little existential dramas, just very interior nighttime worlds. But all this started with Whistler's Mother, you know, and it just sort of went its own way. Where are we now? Oh, that's the same series. Oh, I did write. I had a model, Lorenzo, who said, "Your work is like emotional purgatory." And I thought that was exactly what I was trying to get at. This painting is called Silent Noon. And as you've seen, I worked so much horizontally, one figure on one side, one on the other. I thought, I need to turn this world so that it's a back-to-front world and try to work in that way for a while and challenge myself in that way. So basically, it started off with the green tub. I saw a picture of this acid green bathtub, and I wanted to paint it. So I figured out a way to make this world. And the guy who posed for it, there was no tub. So he basically sat on a stool and just had both hands propped on two paintings that I had, you know, extra canvases. So every day when he would come, he would just be like, "Oh, the water's a little chilly today," or "Today it's..." But yeah, these are the kinds of things you entertain yourself with when you have to sit for 3 hours naked in front of someone. So this is called Silent Noon, and it really is two people together, but in completely different worlds, like discrete worlds, you know, both literally and metaphorically. And this, again, looking backwards from a frontal space into a rear space, it's called Doorway. Yeah, it's just not, sorry, they're a little dark, the slides. And this is called Visitor. We're getting close to the end, don't worry. We're into the COVID era, and I want to do these bar paintings be a little more space-oriented and not quite so literal and flat as I had done earlier. And so I had gotten the figures sort of done, and COVID hit, and I had all this time to just work with patterns. And I decided I would cover everything with pattern. Let's see. This ended up being called Flame Bar, and I think of it as a 5-character painting, really. One character obviously being the figure on our left. Another character is someone who's either just off stage or is about to arrive or has just left. A third character is the sort of picture of the 30s film star who for me is sort of the wry, all-knowing commentator on the whole scenario, and who may be my mother, but we won't go into that. Another character is the city outside, and then the final character, the 5th character, is you, the viewer, making this connection here. This was sort of like my Degas or Van Gogh slumped figure in the bar with a glass of absinthe, but in this other world. And again, a 5-character painting. The figure, the reflected other half of the figure in the mirrored world, with the 3rd figure looking on, the city outside, and then you, the viewer, as the 5th character. This just to quickly show you a way I start. It really is just scribbles, and this is huge. This is way too. This is about this big in a sketchbook. Millions of these. Just trying to figure out some ideas out of my head, and move to this. And this was really getting into the COVID era when I had to work. When I was here, I would work outside and be sitting far away from the model. And which was good, because it got me outdoors. I didn't quite know how to handle this. They were not controlled lighting situations. They were now whatever happened out there. I think I have 2 of these. I don't know which is better. Is it either better? Anyway, another outdoor painting, very Bonnard inspired, although it doesn't look anything like a Bonnard painting, but it's called Young Men in the Garden. And now we're kind of getting back to where we started. Ambiguity, always sort of part of the deal. This painting is called The Island of Reverie. And for me, it's sort of like a dream. Whose reverie is it? What's real? What isn't? And I'm just sort of trying to incorporate all the things. I wanted to throw in everything but the kitchen sink here. The patterns that I love, the various rooms front to back, the mirrored world, lots of images, and sort of like a lot of characters all contributing to this still rather ambiguous world. And finally, this is just a recent painting that I did that I'll show this summer. It's a big, big painting, and it's called Blue Teapot. And so I'll just finish off with another quote, much better than anything I could say. I heard about it as a Philip Guston quote, and then some have said that it's Guston via John Cage, but either way, you can't lose, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm going to take as a Philip Guston quote about painting, but I think we could call it about art in general. When you start working, everybody is in your studio. The past, your friends, your enemies, the art world, and above all, your own ideas. All are there. But as you continue painting, they start leaving one by one, and you're left completely alone. And then, if you're lucky, even you leave. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Forrest, for that beautiful presentation. And thank you, Jack and Kimiko and Debbie. Another round of applause for everyone. I would now like to invite Forrest and Kimiko back onto the stage for a Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please wait for Hannah to come with a microphone to give it to you. Oh, all's well. So yes, if anyone has any questions, raise your hand.
I have a question. I love listening. I love seeing the scribble scrabble sketch and then the finished painting. I love listening to artists speak and to see their work and share and describe their process. It struck me though. You were saying that one of the models said that it was purgatory. What was it? Emotional purgatory. Like emotional purgatory. It was interesting. In the final painting, each person whose face you could see, because there was one body and you couldn't see the face, they had more of an expression than any of the than most of the earlier ones. Are you aware of that? Or this last one, yeah, with the man reclining? I mean, he still had an expression. And then the one looking in the window, and then I think there was also painting of a man. Anyway,
maybe
expression.
Well, more of an expression meaning probably there's a little more. It seems like there's a narrative there, even if you don't know what it is. Whereas some of them are more just situational, like for me, a cycle. So yeah, I think I used to be scared of narrative, like that was a bad thing. You know what I mean? But again, like you said, what did you say? Like form was bourgeois or something, like a form. But now I'm willing to go there a little bit more. So maybe that's what the expressions are. So something's going on.
I actually might steal the mic for 1 second to ask a question. I'm curious how, Forrest, what you're reading informs what you paint, and then Kimiko, I'm curious what art you're looking at or what you see informs what you write, if at all, because I'm seeing a lot of crossover here between the mediums, and I feel like a lot of the way that you talked about your art mirrors the way that writers talk about narrative. So, yeah.
Well, I'll just say, I was saying to my friend Mira before this, I think it's all kind of the same issues fundamentally, whether with writing, with visual art, with maybe musical composition, finding some way into ideas, but you got to have some, there's a formal language you have to use. But wait, what was the question? Like, what am I reading? Or, oh God, I mean, I read so many things. I can't even, reading meaning that inspires my art.
Or if not, it's fine. I was just curious because I feel like you have
will you go ahead? I'll try to think of something that connects in a way.
Mine is a little general as well. I'm the daughter of two artists. My mother made crafts. My father was an oil painter, and then later I'm half Japanese American and half European American, mostly German on my dad's side. So later in life, he became more interested in Asian art. So he went from oil paint. Anyway, he was also a high school art teacher, and it was really hard for him not to be a teacher 24/7. He drove me and my sister and my mother crazy, and our vacations were like going to the Yale Museum. That would be a vacation, Yeah, yeah. Well, now it is. Now I love going, but back then you're like, oh. Or we'd be driving by and he'd say, "Oh, look at that roof! See, a mansard roof." So, but the way I see things is, like right now, looking out the back window, I see the patterns that you were talking about. I see the window frame has made a series of rectangles, and then that cuts up everything in the back. So I tend to see things in patterns and repetition and then deviation from the repetition. And that's very much from growing up with a craft orientation.
Forrest, I'm curious, how do you interpret, excuse me, how do you interpret that Guston quote you ended with when he says, if you're lucky, you leave the room?
You can't just accept the ambiguity and no, I think sometimes, well, let me put it this way as far as in practice. Sometimes when I'm having a really bad day, maybe I don't feel well, either physically or mentally or both, sometimes I will just say, you know what? I can't do this today. You'll have to do it, whether it's the gods or, the word muse is ridiculous, but just something else, and I just sort of abandon responsibility. And sometimes those are the best days when I've but I'm there. I'm there as a vessel or whatever it is, and I'm not trying to sound, overly dramatic about this. But I suppose I take it as really almost abandoning all ego, all sort of preconceived ideas of this is what I do and this is what I'm going to do today, and just really to be there to respond in the moment. And for me, when I'm working with a model, that's really great because all I have to do is just look and respond, just moment to moment, one thing at a time. So I don't know if that's very helpful. I mean, do you have any ideas about what that might mean?
Well, sometimes I'll say to students, and certainly to myself, that I have to get out of my own way. Yeah. Just get out of your way, your own way, and just sit and scribble, do the work, and then revise later.
Like you sort of trust, when I was talking about all these people in your studio, your friends, your enemies, maybe your parents, that's just all there. And at a certain point, you have to sort of let go of that as a conscious and active thing that you're reacting against or building on, and just sort of trust that that's there. Because I don't think you're going to go anywhere unexpected or that it will surprise you if you're, you know, too locked into all that.
Just along those lines, could you talk a little bit about ways that you trick yourselves into getting to that place?
Well, you're in my class, and I've been trying to trick you since Sunday. Writing prompts where, you know, I don't sit and think, I just respond to the prompt. So I just move into it. And maybe that's somewhat analogous to the model. You're being prompted by the model, perhaps, the visual. Yeah, and also forms. I've been writing a lot in forms, but part of the ghost forest is sometimes the form that I've written is the rough draft. So I'll find the poem in the sestina, but then there's still the ghost of a sestina. So if I treat everything as a rough draft, that suits me very well. That's play then.
Yeah, that's tough. Like, how do I get into that place of, you know? Well, I mentioned one thing when I don't feel so great, but another thing that's and this may not be answering the question, but Zara was talking about sometimes just mark making and just working on a pattern. It's almost like embroidery. Just sometimes I can get so into that everything else disappears. Like I'm so fully engaged in something that I'm losing all self-consciousness. And sometimes it's also good with, say, a model or a situation that I feel like I don't understand. I have no idea what I'm doing. There's no way I can control it anymore. I've just got to respond in the moment. And that's sort of a way of like letting all of that other stuff go, all of the clutter.
Forrest, so yesterday at, I think it was during Dante's reading or afterwards, you asked, you know, what are your thoughts on talking about sex? Yeah. And then you started this talk today with that Edward Hopper quote about how if words were enough, no one would become a painter. And I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on painting about sex, whether that is formally or in subject matter or anything like that?
Well, on the thing of Hopper, there is another Hopper quote that says the answer lies in the painting itself. So whatever, I don't want to get all, be all coy about things, but the thing with me, it's funnily enough, is I don't really think the paintings are about sex, and if it's in there, it's something, well, it may be part of things, but it's not sort of the subject in a way for me, in the way that that particular set of poems that Dante read were very explicitly about that. So I don't really know how to answer that, you know what I mean? Other than to just say I don't think they're really about sex, although if someone sees one and thinks that there's something going on sexual or is turned on by sex or whatever the heck, that's fine. But for me, it really is about some sort of like psychological world of relationships or lack thereof between people, and maybe if they're two men, you read into that like, well, this is a homosexual thing, a gay thing, a queer thing, whatever you want to call it, and that's perfectly fine. Like, I guess the only thing I'll say in relation to that, which isn't really totally answering your question, but I know of people who say they don't want to be known as a gay writer or a gay painter or a queer writer or a queer painter or whatever. And I sort of, for me, it's sort of like fundamentally part of my identity. Like it's fine with me, you know what I mean? And once that's sort of just on the table as the obvious, you can move on to other things that obviously concern all of us and that everyone understands and relates to,
I think I look, when I see your paintings, I see both sexuality of the body, right? The body's there, the naked body. But because the emotion is in purgatory, it does, I don't feel that they're erotic bodies, except for the last painting. I felt that there was more I could respond to. There was a kind of eroticism there. But the other ones I felt were more about the body and maybe doubt and ambiguity, using your word, which is really, really interesting. So that it is that sort of psychological tradesman. Is that what was journeyman? Journeyman. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, but that's a good question. About they're pretty darn naked.
I've got two questions, one for each of you. Kimiko, congratulations on new and selected poems. I always ask poets this question. 11, 12 books. What was the experience for you to go through all of that material? And also I should point out, for those of you who haven't seen the book, not only did she go through all of that material, but she wrote an incredibly large number of new poems in that. And I'm just curious, for the selection process, what was that like for you to revisit the older work, and you revised some of it, and did a poem or a book surface for you in a way that it hadn't before? Like, oh, I really like this book that I wrote, might have been my third or fourth book. So I'm curious about that.
Oh, one of my old books, did it resurface into that one?
Meaning, in the process, did you say, oh, this is now a new favorite poet of mine, and I hadn't thought about it in a number of years, or something like that?
I'm not so sure about that, but I became really sad looking through my poems, kind of reliving certain periods of my life that were emotionally really tough. So just personally, I became sad, but also very excited and proud of some of the poems, and that they've, in my mind, lasted and can continue in this other form. There were some poems that I was really restricted by number of pages, so which was a good thing. So there were poems that maybe I would have put in, but what I did was I made centos of some of the poems in the books. A cento is when you take a line or two from a whole bunch of different poems and you compose a new one. So I have a cento from my very first book, Air Pocket, which you all don't want to see all those poems. Just maybe one or two. But I made a cento with some of the lines. So there was a way for me to recall some of the poems and the energy in those books. And then for me, that sort of that gray thread, that running thread through it. And there were also little snapshots that unfortunately really didn't come out very well in the printing. They're very grainy. But I wanted I wanted this to be almost an autobiography, a memoir, so that there are different ways of reading the book, and that it's held together with the gray sort of commenting on the poems.
Thanks. And Forrest, a comment and then a question. So this not painting about sex, your viewer comes, first of all, you choose really hot models, so that you're responsible for the choice of model, and then the viewer will then will read the painting however they read the painting, in the same way I imagine, projecting myself onto you, that young Forrest read that Bronzino painting. Bronzino chose that particular young man among the many young men that he could have chose. So I'm curious about. That's my comment. Separate now question. I'm curious about how you title your paintings. If there is ever a moment when a title comes before a painting, or does it always come after the painting? And if you have the time, can you talk us through or say some of the titles of the paintings that you showed us, but then we didn't? God. Yeah. I know, hard stuff.
Well, quickly, I'll just say about the sex thing. I'm not trying to be disingenuous about that, but I just feel like in the world in general, and at least my world and here in particular, we're just inundated with homoeroticism. And boring to me after, you know what I mean? When the subject is only sex, it's great. Hey, love that. But it's not, there's got to be something else going on to hold my interest, particularly as I move through life and I'm an adult now or whatever. But I do think in a lot of ways, a lot of these paintings are for the 16-year-old me who is looking for something, you know, reflecting himself. So that's built into it. As far as titles go, I mean, they can be all over the place. I mean, when I was making that painting of the figure lying on the couch, I was listening to, this sounds so pretentious, but it's true, listen to a lot of Debussy, which I love, and there's one piece called L'Île Joyeuse, which is, you know, the joyous island or whatever, and I just thought, that's what this painting is, but this painting isn't joyous at all, and it's not about joy at all, but it is really about reverie, and in some ways for me, I remember Zara was saying, I just need to live in the past right now, and I sort of get that because of the world we're living in and a lot of other things, the figure is sort of on this couch in the middle of like all of these things. It's sort of on an island, and I thought it's the island of reverie. And sometimes it's just something very simple like blue teapot. That's the thing that drove the painting, just to get this blue teapot in there, although there's a whole world with the figures around it. And I started thinking of these figures, really what they're sort of doing is looking to you, the viewer, to explain themselves to themselves in a funny way. And one's called Doorway. So sometimes it can be sort of poetic like the Island of Reverie, and sometimes it can just be something like, this is a doorway, or there's a blue teapot on the table.
If the eroticism isn't intentional, what about the tension or the longing, the suspected longing in those paintings? Are those emotions or those reactions intentional?
I'd say they're intentional, and sometimes that can be erotic, right? That sort of thing, you know? Yeah, I think a lot of it is about tension, you know? Yeah, for sure, and that's intentional. Yeah.
Do you intend, I mean, would you be pleased to know that when people look at your paintings, it will spark conversations?
Well, yeah, that's great. I mean, that's the thing is I can only just do the paintings, and if it sparks a conversation with you, or if it's erotic to you, that, you know, has nothing to do with me. Well, I think that's great about anything, you know, that you read or look at. If you're not sure quite what it's about, you want to discuss it and try to make sense of it. Honestly, this is part of the Guston thing about it. I'm not really thinking like, how am I going to angle this so the audience can think of this or that. I'm just trying to make something for me that I feel like is a decent resolved painting that I can live with and then maybe build on. But I've learned you can't control what anyone thinks at all, and I just don't even, if it does spark a conversation or someone likes it, that's great. But I can't, you know, yeah.
We're going to take one last question right over here.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much. I'm in Forrest's class, and I am thoroughly enjoying you as a teacher. And the thing that you just said, the last thing you said about you can't control a painting, and you're just building the painting, and you know, it's like a painting, sometimes maybe it controls you, maybe you control it, you have these moments of connection to it. And when I first thought about taking your class, I looked at your work online, and I was just, you know, very curious about it. So today, having you speak about it just took me yet to another level that I so appreciate. I just view it as, you know, a number of people have talked about the tension in the work, but I just think of these relationships that I can't figure out between the characters. And I thought it was really interesting when you started layering, you know, kind of like the stage, and that they're in a scaffolding. And all of it seems to be so much about building compositionally, formally, and character. And the sculpting that I think goes on both in the porches or in the spaces and also in your paintings, which I can't wait to see in life, because you can imagine how they must jump out with the thick paint and the color that you can't see on a slide. So I'm going to go to the Schoolhouse Gallery and make them pull out a painting So, but anyway, thank you so much. Really appreciate you as a teacher and getting a lot out of your class. I don't have a question. I just wanted to talk for a few minutes, you know.
Thank you so much for your wonderful questions and for coming to this evening. Thank you again to Forrest and Kimiko. Before you go, be sure to check out the faculty books that are on the table back there, and the gallery, which will be open until 8 p.m., and have a good night.
Thank you.
Student night tomorrow. Wait. Student night is tomorrow. Sign up on the sheet back there, and also go to the open studio.